Snow fell in large flakes on the icy streets of Traverse City on the evening of January 23, 2002. The temperature had dropped to -15 degrees Fahrenheit, and the gusty wind off Lake Michigan was chilling to the bone. On evenings like this, residents usually preferred to stay home, but not the local youth. The Parker family home on Pine Street was hosting a party to celebrate the end of winter exams. Music, laughter, and twinkling lights shone through the snow-covered windows. Emily Lawson parked her silver 2000 first-year Ford Taurus around 8 p.m. The 18-year-old senior at Traverse City West High School was in high spirits. In 2 weeks, she was about to begin her first semester at Michigan State University, where she planned to study psychology. She was so excited about the party, recalls Jennifer Miller, Emily's best friend since 7th grade. It was the last chance to see everyone before college. She wore her favorite blue sweater and new jeans that she bought especially for the party. I remember her telling me on the phone that she wanted the night to be special. The party was attended by about 30 people, recent graduates of the school, and several upperclassmen. According to witnesses, Emily seemed happy, dancing and socializing with friends. However, around 10 o'clock that evening, several people noticed her arguing with her ex-boyfriend, Jason Morgan. They had broken up about a month before that night. Brian Parker, the host of the party, told Brian Parker, Jason didn't take it well. He was still trying to win her back, but Emily had already moved on. I saw them talking in the corner of the kitchen that night, and it was definitely not a friendly conversation. At 11 hours and 30 minutes, Emily informed Jennifer that she was leaving. She looked upset, Jennifer recalls. I offered to drive her home, but she said she wanted to be alone and get some air. Said she'd call me when she got home. That was the last time I saw her. The Lawson family lived on Maplewood Drive, about 3 miles from the Parker home. The drive usually took no more than 10 minutes, but that night, Emily never came home. My husband and I went to bed around 11, thinking Emily would be back by midnight, says Linda Lawson, Emily's mother. When I woke up at 3 in the morning and saw that her bed was empty, I immediately knew something was wrong. Emily never stayed overnight at a friend's house without telling us. She was a responsible girl. Richard Lawson, Emily's father, immediately began calling his daughter's friends. No one had seen her since the party. At 5 hours and 30 minutes on the morning of January 24, 2002, the Lawson family went to the Traverse City Police Department to report her missing. I remember the officer looking at us with an expression like we were panicking too much, recalls Richard Lawson. He said most teenagers who don't come home for the night usually show up for breakfast. But I knew my daughter. Something wasn't right. Despite initial indecision, police began their search. At 8 o'clock on the morning of January 24th, Patrol Officer Michael Rodriguez found Emily's silver Ford Taurus on the side of Cherry Bend Road, about a mile from the Parkers' home. The car was locked, no keys were inside, and there were no signs of struggle or violence. Emily's purse and wallet, containing $37 in cash and her driver's license, were lying on the passenger seat. It immediately changed the nature of the investigation, said Detective Robert Harris, who was assigned in charge of the Emily Lawson case. A teenage girl wouldn't leave her car and purse in the middle of winter and walk out voluntarily on a night when the temperature dropped below freezing. For the next 48 hours, police and volunteers combed the area around where the car was found. The sniffer dogs picked up a trail from the car that led about 50 yards along the road toward town and then broke off. This suggested that Emily might have gotten into another car. There were very few tracks in the snow, notes Officer James Collins, who was involved in the search operation. The heavy snowfall that began around midnight likely obscured most of the evidence. Meanwhile, police were interviewing everyone who attended the party. Particular attention was paid to Jason Morgan, who several witnesses said had argued with Emily. "Yeah, we talked, but it wasn't anything serious," Jason stated during his first interview on January 24th at 14 hours and 20 minutes. "I just wanted to know if we had a chance to get back together before she left for college. She said no, and I accepted that. When she left, I was talking to my friends in the living room." Jason claimed that after the party, he went straight to his home where he lived with his parents. His mother confirmed that he returned home at about 12:30 at night, and she heard him go up to his room. The police noted, however, that a full hour elapsed between the time Emily left the party, at approximately 11 hours and 30 minutes, and Jason's return home, even though the distance between the Parker's house and the Morgan house was less than 2 miles. On January 26th, 3 days after Emily's disappearance, the police announced a formal investigation. By this time, the story had made the local news. The Traverse City Record-Eagle newspaper ran a front-page headline, "Local alumna disappeared under mysterious circumstances." Emily Lawson is described as a responsible, determined young woman with no problems, wrote reporter Tom Baker. She was a school board member, a volunteer at a local hospital, and planned to study psychology at Michigan State University. According to friends and family, she had no reason to run away from home. Despite growing public concern, Traverse City Police continued to look into the possibility of voluntarily leaving home. "We are not ruling out any leads at this time," Sheriff David Norton said at a press conference on January 27th. "Sometimes even the most responsible young people make impulsive decisions." That stance has sparked outrage from the Lawson family. "They're wasting precious time," Richard Lawson told a local television station. "My daughter didn't run away. She wouldn't have left her car and purse behind. She wouldn't have missed the start of her first semester of college that she's been preparing for years." That same day, police obtained data from cell towers. The last signal from Emily's phone was recorded at 23 hours and 45 minutes on January 23rd, around the time her phone came within range of a tower near where her car was found. "This confirms the time frame we set," Detective Harris explained. "Emily left the party around 11:30, and about 15 minutes later, her phone is fixed in the area where her car was later found. After that, the phone was either turned off or destroyed because we did not receive any further signals." By the end of January, the investigation had taken a new direction. Analysis of snow and dirt on Emily's shoes, found in her closet at home, showed particles of concrete and limestone that were not consistent with the soil around the Lawson home or the party site. These materials were often used on construction sites. There were several major construction projects going on in Traverse City at the time, Detective Harris recalled. One of them was the new Pineview Resort Hotel complex on the bayfront. Construction began in October of 2001, and by January of 2002, the walls of the main building were already being erected. Interestingly, Jason Morgan, Emily's ex-boyfriend, worked at the site as a carpenter's helper. When police questioned him again on January 31st, he acknowledged this fact, but denied ever bringing Emily there. "I just work there. Why would I bring a girl there? It's a dangerous construction site, not a dating site," he said during questioning. Police checked the construction site on February 1st, 2002 with sniffer dogs but found nothing. The construction foreman, Michael Bennett, cooperated with police and granted full access to the site. "I remember the police coming in with dogs," Bennett later recounted in an interview. "We had a complete work stoppage for the entire day. I told my guys this was more important than any deadline. There's a girl missing, and if we can help find her, we have to do everything we can." By mid-February, the intensity of the search began to wane. There were no new clues, witnesses, or leads. Volunteers who had recently gone out by the hundreds to comb the wooded areas and bay shores were now coming in by the dozens, and then by the few. "That's the hardest part, when people start to forget," says Linda Lawson. "For everyone else, life goes on. But for us, time stopped the night Emily didn't come home." On February 15th, 2002, Traverse City Police officially moved Emily Lawson's case to the unsolved crimes category, but assured the public that the investigation was ongoing. In the meantime, Michigan State University has kept Emily's seat, hoping for her return. "I still have her acceptance letter lying around," Linda says, going through her belongings in her daughter's room, which remains untouched. "She was so excited when she got it, said it was the beginning of a new chapter in her life." I just want to know what happened to my girl." The February sky over Traverse City seemed endlessly gray. Temperatures held steady below zero, and snowfalls were replaced by freezing rain. But despite the harsh weather, the search for Emily Lawson continued. On February 6, 2002, on the 14th day after the disappearance of the girl, Mayor Robert Wilson announced the creation of a special task force to search for Emily. The group included representatives from the Traverse City Police Department, the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office, and specialists from the Michigan Bureau of Criminal Investigation. "Our city has never faced a tragedy like this," the mayor said at a meeting at City Hall. "Emily is one of us, and we will not stop until we find her and bring her home to her parents. Every day of delay is another day of suffering for the Lawson family." That same evening, more than 300 residents gathered in the parking lot outside Traverse City West High School, where Emily once attended. They held candles and photos of the girl, and a local pastor said a prayer for her safe return. "I remember standing there in the crowd and seeing people's faces," says Thomas Schaefer, a history teacher who taught Emily's graduating class. "Some were crying, others looked determined, but everyone was united by a common goal: to find Emily." After a candlelight vigil, search parties formed. Residents brought maps of the town and surrounding area, divided the area into sectors, and created a search schedule. Local businesses provided volunteers with hot coffee, food, and necessary equipment, flashlights, radios, warm clothing. "It was an amazing show of community solidarity," Detective Harris recalls. "But from a professional standpoint, we realized that the chances of finding Emily alive were diminishing by the day. In these conditions, with no shelter, with temperatures so low, the statistics are not on our side." Nevertheless, search operations continued. Volunteers combed forested areas around the city, shorelines, abandoned buildings, and farmland. Teams with drones provided by a local college and missing person specialists from neighboring counties joined the search. In parallel with the search, police were deepening their investigation. The main focus remained on Jason Morgan, Emily's ex-boyfriend. On February 22nd, detectives obtained a search warrant for his home and vehicle. In Morgan's vehicle, a 2001-year-old blue Chevy, we found traces of soil similar to that found on Emily's shoes, the police report said. However, forensics revealed that this soil is common throughout Grand Traverse County and is not unique evidence. Nothing suspicious was found at Morgan's home. His parents stood firm that their son was innocent and provided an alibi for the night of the disappearance. Jason may have had a temper, but he's not capable of violence. Mary Morgan, Jason's mother, told local news, "He loved Emily. He was devastated when she ended their relationship, but he accepted it. And now he's just like the rest of us. He just wants her found alive and well." Despite the lack of direct evidence, Jason remained the prime suspect. Police found that he had missed work on January 24th and 25th, the first days after Emily's disappearance, which seemed suspicious. "I was too upset to work," Jason explained during another interrogation in early March. "Everyone was talking about me, looking at me like I'd done something terrible. I couldn't stand it." Police also discovered that Jason did not have a permanent alibi for the evening of January 23rd, from 11 hours and 30 minutes to 12 hours and 30 minutes, the period when Emily allegedly disappeared. Several people had seen him at the party during that time, but no one could say exactly where he was at each minute. "In situations like this, incomplete alibis are common," Detective Harris commented. "There were about 30 people at the party, all moving around, talking in different groups. No one was following one person all the time." By mid-March, police began to widen their circle of suspects. The investigators' attention was drawn to Scott Taylor, a 22-year-old local man who, according to several witnesses, had taken an unhealthy interest in Emily in the months before her disappearance. "He would always show up wherever Emily was," Jennifer Miller recounted. "At coffee shops, at the library, even at the mall. It was kind of creepy. Emily told me several times that she felt uncomfortable around him." Taylor worked as a bartender at the local Pine Cone bar and had no criminal record. However, when police searched his apartment, they found several photos of Emily taken without her knowledge, in the schoolyard, outside her home, and at a local park. "They're just pictures," Taylor insisted during questioning. "I'm an amateur photographer. Emily is a beautiful girl. I wanted to do her portfolio, but I was shy to ask directly." Taylor's alibi for the night of the disappearance has been confirmed. He was working at the bar until 2 a.m., as witnessed by both his co-workers and surveillance footage. Nevertheless, his behavior caused concern, and police continued to keep him under surveillance. The third person of interest to investigators was Ryan Cooper, a 32-year-old truck driver who often stopped in Traverse City on his way from Detroit to Marquette. On the night of Emily's disappearance, his truck was spotted on a gas station camera just a half-mile from where the girl's car was found. Cooper had a conviction for assault in 2001, Detective Harris notes, and his route regularly passed through our town. We couldn't ignore a coincidence like that. The investigation into Cooper, however, yielded no meaningful results. He confirmed he was in Traverse City that night, but insisted he never left his truck except to refuel. Security footage corroborated his words, and no evidence of a connection to Emily was found. By April of the year 2002, the intensity of the search had diminished considerably. The snow had begun to melt, exposing the ground, but no new clues had been found. Volunteers who had recently come out in the hundreds now gathered only in small groups on weekends. The local news made less and less mention of Emily's disappearance, shifting to other events. "It's a natural process," says psychologist Sarah Jenkins, who has worked with the Lawson family. "Society can't maintain this high level of emotional involvement indefinitely. People get tired, they have their own lives, their own problems. But for the family of a missing person, it's like time stops." Richard and Linda Lawson refused to give up. They set up a foundation to find Emily, printed thousands of flyers with their daughter's picture, and distributed them throughout the state of Michigan. They gave interviews to any media outlet that showed interest in the story and met regularly with detectives working the case. "Every morning I wake up thinking, maybe today is the day we'll find Emily," Linda says. "And every night when I go to bed, I promise myself that I'll look even harder tomorrow." On May 15th, nearly 4 months after Emily's disappearance, Traverse City Police announced that the case was going cold. That meant that the active investigation was suspended for lack of new evidence, but the case remained open, and any new information would be scrutinized. "We have done everything we can," Sheriff David Norton said at a press conference. "Interviewed over 100 witnesses, followed up on dozens of leads, combed through hundreds of acres of land. Unfortunately, we simply don't have enough evidence to press charges against anyone or to continue an active search. But that doesn't mean we're forgetting about Emily. Her case remains a priority for our department." The statement sparked a storm of outrage among Traverse City residents, especially those close to the Lawson family. That same day, more than 50 people gathered in front of the police department with signs reading, "Justice for Emily," and "Don't forget about her." "This is unacceptable," said Carol Wilson, an English teacher and protest organizer. "How can we tell Emily's parents that we're giving up, that we're just moving on to the next thing? This girl deserves better from her town." Under public pressure, Sheriff Norton agreed to assign one detective to focus solely on Emily's case, even after it was reclassified as a cold case. That detective was Robert Harris, who led the investigation from the beginning. "I gave my word to the Lawson family that I would not stop looking until I knew what happened to their daughter," Harris told the Traverse City Record Eagle. "We may not have any hot leads right now, but that doesn't mean we should stop. Sometimes it takes time for the truth to come out." In June of 2002, the Lawson family hired Michael Foster, a Detroit private investigator specializing in missing persons. Foster had a reputation for solving cases the police had given up on. "In these cases, it's often helpful to look at the investigation with fresh eyes," Foster explained his approach. "Sometimes police get hung up on a particular theory and overlook other possibilities. My job is to look at all scenarios, even the most unlikely ones. Foster began by re-interviewing all the key witnesses, including Emily's friends who attended the party and Jason Morgan. He also took an interest in the construction site of the Pineview Resort Hotel complex where Jason worked. Construction is the perfect place to hide a crime, Foster noted in his report to the Lawson family. The constant noise, the movement of heavy equipment, the large number of workers coming and going, and, most importantly, the opportunity to literally encase evidence in concrete. Along with police, Foster organized a second inspection of the construction site in late June, but by then construction was well underway. The main hotel building was already erected, and many areas that had been open in January were now inaccessible for inspection. "We did everything we could," said Foreman Michael Bennett, who accompanied detectives. "But if something was hidden in the walls or foundation in the early stages of construction, it's now undetectable without demolishing the entire building." By the fall of 2002, the Emily Lawson case was practically a dead end. Private Detective Foster continued his work, but no new significant evidence was emerging. Jason Morgan remained the prime suspect, but there wasn't enough evidence to bring charges against him. "That's the hardest thing for parents," says psychologist Jenkins. "Not knowing what happened to your child is a special kind of torture. There's no closure, no way to begin the grieving process. There is only constant uncertainty and hope, which becomes more painful every day." On January 23, 2003, the first anniversary of Emily's disappearance, the Lawson family organized a memorial service at a local church. More than 200 people gathered to support Richard and Linda, remember Emily, and pray for her return, or at least answers about her fate. "A year ago, our lives were divided into a before and an after," Richard Lawson said, addressing the crowd. "But we will not give up hope. We will not stop looking. There is someone somewhere who knows what happened to our daughter, and we pray that that person will find the strength to come forward and tell the truth." By this point, the Emily Lawson case had finally moved into the category of unsolved active investigation was suspended, and only Detective Harris occasionally returned to the case file, trying to find something that had escaped the attention of the investigators earlier. The Lawson family gradually realized the bitter reality. They may never know what happened to their daughter on that freezing January night. Time in Traverse City flowed inexorably, counting down the days, weeks, months, and years since Emily Lawson's disappearance. In the Lawson family home on Maplewood Drive, their daughter's room remained untouched, like a museum to the memory of an 18-year-old girl who never returned home after a January party in the year 2002. "Sometimes I sit there for hours," Linda Lawson confessed in an interview on the 3rd anniversary of her daughter's disappearance. "Touching her things, rereading her diaries, just breathing the air that still seems to hold her presence. It's the only place I feel close to her." Each year, on January 23rd, the Lawson family organized a memorial service at the local Holy Trinity Church. For the first few years, these services drew large crowds: Emily's friends, her school teachers, neighbors, just concerned residents. But each year, they became fewer and fewer. In 2005, on the 3rd anniversary, about 100 people came, recalled the Reverend Alan Collins, who conducted the services. By 2008, there were no more than 30. It's a natural process. Life goes on, people move, they have new concerns. Only for Emily's parents, it was as if time had stopped. Richard Lawson, Emily's father, left his job at a construction company in 2003 to devote himself fully to finding his daughter. He founded a small nonprofit organization called Find Emily, which was dedicated not only to maintaining public interest in his daughter's case, but also to helping other families with missing children. "It became his mission," Linda says. "He couldn't save his daughter, but by helping others, he found some meaning in our tragedy." Richard worked day and night, contacting police departments all over the Midwest, organizing search operations, counseling parents who were just facing the disappearance of a child. Unfortunately, This constant immersion in the world of missing people took a toll on Richard's health. In 2006, at the age of 52, he suffered a severe heart attack. The doctors said it was the result of chronic stress, recalls Linda. They insisted he slow down, but Richard couldn't stop himself. He was saying, "If I stop looking, I'll betray Emily." Meanwhile, Traverse City was changing. The Pineview Resort, whose construction had just begun at the time of Emily's disappearance, was successfully completed by the end of 2002 and had become one of the most popular vacation destinations in the region. The neighborhood around it was actively developing. New restaurants, stores, and apartment complexes appeared. In 2005, the Traverse City Council approved a large-scale plan to reconstruct the historic center. Old buildings were restored, streets were improved, new parks and public spaces appeared. The city was becoming more and more attractive to tourists and new residents. "It was like waking up after a long sleep," commented Thomas Baker, a reporter for the Traverse City Record Eagle newspaper. "For years, our town was a typical northern Michigan hick place where nothing much happens. The story of Emily Lawson shook us all, reminded us that tragedy can happen anywhere, but life doesn't stand still. The town grew, changed, moved forward." By the year 2007, nearly half of Emily's classmates had left Traverse City. Some had moved on after college to bigger cities like Detroit or Chicago. Others had started families and new lives elsewhere. Jennifer Miller, Emily's best friend, graduated from the University of Michigan and moved to New York City, where she began a career in publishing. "I felt guilty about the move for a long time," Jennifer admitted in a phone interview. "Like I was abandoning Emily, leaving her in the past, but the therapist helped me realize that moving on wasn't a betrayal. Emily would want me to be happy." Jason Morgan, Emily's ex-boyfriend, who has long remained the prime suspect in her disappearance, left Traverse City as early as late 2002. According to his parents, the constant police attention and suspicious stares from neighbors made his life in his hometown unbearable. He moved to Grand Rapids, found a job in construction, tried to start over, Mary Morgan recounted in a rare interview. But wherever he went, the shadow of suspicion followed him. People search his name on the internet and find old articles about Emily's case. It's a stigma that can't be washed away. Detective Robert Harris, who once vowed not to stop until he found Emily, retired in 2008. Before he left, he handed over the entire case file to his young colleague, Detective Laura Ramirez. "He came to my office with a huge box of files," Ramirez recalls. "Said, 'I couldn't find it. Maybe you'll have better luck. Don't let this case die.'" Ramirez kept her promise. Every few months, she would review the case file, trying to find new leads, contacting Lawson's family. But time worked against her. Witnesses had moved away, memories had faded, evidence, if any, had long since disappeared. By the 10th anniversary of Emily's disappearance, in January 2012, the case seemed hopeless. Linda and Richard Lawson still organized an annual memorial service, but now it was attended mostly by family members and a few of their closest friends. 10 years is a lifetime, Richard said as he stood before the small group gathered in the church. "My daughter would be 28 now. Maybe she'd have a family of her own, children. All these years, all these opportunities have been stolen from her, and from us." Richard's health continued to deteriorate. After a heart attack in 2006, he was diagnosed with a serious heart condition that required constant medical monitoring. Doctors warned him to reduce his stress levels. But how could a father stop thinking about his missing daughter? Linda found her own way to cope with grief. She volunteered at the local hospital where Emily once worked and started a support group for parents who had lost children. "By helping others, I help myself," she explained. "When I see someone coping with loss, finding the strength to move on with their life, I feel like maybe someday I can too." In 2009, the Lawson family made the difficult decision to declare Emily legally dead. It was a necessary step to resolve a number of legal issues related to inheritance and insurance. "It doesn't mean we've given up hope," Linda emphasized in an interview. "It's just a formality, a legal procedure. In our hearts, Emily is always alive, and we will never stop looking for answers." A memorial plaque with Emily's name was placed in Oakwood City Cemetery, though there was no one to bury. Linda brought fresh flowers there each week and spent time talking to her daughter, telling her about what was going on in their lives, and life in Traverse City went on. By the year 2010, the city's population had grown nearly 20% over the year 2002. New businesses were opening, new homes were being built, and children were being born who never knew Emily Lawson, and for whom her story was just an urban legend, a scary tale told to teenagers to warn them of danger. "I teach history at the same high school where Emily went to," says Sarah Jenkins, who was a high school senior herself when the disappearance happened. "And sometimes students ask me about her. They've heard scraps of the story, distorted rumors. To them, it's something distant, almost mythical. But for those of us who remember, it's still an open wound." The Pineview Resort, which was indirectly implicated in the investigation because of Jason Morgan's work there, has gone through several changes of ownership over the years. In 2011, it was purchased by a major hotel chain, which began a major renovation to turn the complex into a high-end luxury resort. "It was a logical business decision," Baker comments. "The original building was built quickly, with a limited budget. By 2011, it was already looking outdated and in need of a major upgrade." Michael Bennett, who was the foreman in the construction of the original complex, by then had a successful career in the construction business. His company, Bennett Construction, had grown from a small crew to one of northern Michigan's largest construction firms, and he himself had become a respected member of the community, sponsoring local sports teams, participating in charitable projects, even considering a run for city council. Michael was always a quiet, dependable person. Carol Wilson, a former English teacher who now served on the city's development committee, characterized him. "The kind of person a country town relies on, hard-working, honest, involved in the community." As for Detective Ramirez, she continued to return to Emily's case periodically, even though the active investigation had long since ceased. Every few months, she would review old records, try to contact former witnesses, and check to see if there was any new technology or techniques that might help. "This is not just another case for me," she said. "I feel a responsibility to the Lawson family, to Emily's memory, and frankly, to Robert Harris, who trusted me to continue his work." By early 2012, the Emily Lawson case had become one of the longest unsolved missing persons cases in Grand Traverse County history. In 10 years, police interviewed more than 200 people, tested dozens of leads, and combed thousands of acres of land. But Emily has never been found, and no one has been charged in her disappearance. "The hardest thing is not knowing," Linda said in an interview on the 10th anniversary of her daughter's disappearance. "If I knew she was dead, I could mourn her and maybe someday find a way to move on with my life. But without knowing what happened to her, I'm stuck in this horrible in-between state, unable to let go, but also unable to move forward." In February of 2012, a few weeks after the 10th anniversary of Emily's disappearance, demolition work began on part of the old Pineview Resort building in Traverse City as part of a major renovation. The new owners decided to completely rebuild the west wing of the complex, which no longer met modern standards of safety and comfort. No one could have predicted that this decision, purely commercial, dictated by the desire to increase the attractiveness of the resort for tourists, would lead to an unexpected turn in a case that many had long considered hopeless. The morning of March 11, 2012, was unusually warm for an early Michigan March. The thermometer read nearly 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and the workers on the Pineview Resort site were glad to be able to take off their heavy winter jackets. The dismantling of the west wing of the complex was now in its third week, and work was progressing faster than planned. Foreman Terrence McCoy had been in charge of the demolition from the beginning. He had been in the construction business for more than 20 years and had seen a lot of things, but what he was about to face that day would change his life forever and turn the history of Traverse City upside down. We were working on demolishing one of the interior load-bearing walls on the second floor, McCoy recalled in later interviews. It was a massive concrete structure reinforced with steel bars. We used jackhammers and hydraulic cutters to demolish it piece by piece. At about 10 o'clock and 30 minutes in the morning, backhoe operator Douglas Reed noticed something strange. As the machine's bucket demolished another segment of the wall, something that didn't look like building material showed up in the resulting breach. At first, I thought it was some kind of rags or a bag of trash that the construction workers had accidentally bricked up, Reed said. This sometimes happens on construction sites. Workers may leave tools or construction debris in a wall cavity before pouring concrete. Reed stopped the car and called for the foreman. McCoy approached the breach and shined a flashlight inside. What he saw caused him to immediately stop all work and call the police. Inside the wall was something wrapped in plastic sheeting, McCoy recalls, his voice shaking even years after the event. When I shined my flashlight, I saw a skull, a human skull that still had remnants of hair on it. I've worked in construction for over 2 decades, but I've never seen anything like this. Traverse City Police arrived on the scene within 15 minutes. The first officer on the scene was Sergeant Laura Ramirez, the same one who continued to handle the Emily Lawson case after Detective Harris left. As soon as I got the call, I had a strange feeling, Ramirez says. In our small town, it's not often that human remains are found, and the fact that they were discovered in a building that was under construction right around the time Emily disappeared, it was too much of a coincidence to ignore. Ramirez immediately cordoned off the area and called forensic experts from the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office. By noon, a full forensics team was already on the scene, and news of the grisly find began to spread through the city. By the time the county's chief medical examiner, Dr. Elizabeth Chang, arrived, part of the wall had already been carefully dismantled, giving access to what were undoubtedly human remains. The body was in a small cavity inside the concrete wall, Dr. Chang later explained at a press conference. It was partially wrapped in construction polyethylene sheeting that is normally used for waterproofing. The condition of the remains indicated that the body had been there for a long time, probably since the building was constructed. Extraction of the remains took several hours. Forensic investigators carefully documented every step, taking photographs and collecting all possible evidence. The bodies were largely mummified due to the dry environment inside the wall, making visual identification difficult, but preserving a lot of valuable forensic evidence. By 16 o'clock, the remains were completely removed and transported to the county morgue for detailed examination. Detective Ramirez remained at the scene, watching the continued collection of evidence from the cavity in the wall. We found several key items along with the body, notes Ramirez. An engraved silver bracelet, remnants of clothing, and most importantly, a small leather wallet with a partially preserved driver's license. The driver's license belonged to Emily Lawson. At 18 hours and 30 minutes, Detective Ramirez personally went to the Lawson home. She had the hardest part of police work ahead of her, informing the family that their daughter's remains had probably been found. Richard opened the door, and from the look on Ramirez's face, she knew immediately why she had come. "You found her, didn't you?" he asked quietly. Ramirez nodded. "Mr. Lawson, we found human remains in the wall of the Pineview Hotel complex. Preliminary identification indicates it may be Emily. We can't be completely sure until we get the DNA test results, but we did find her driver's license." Linda, who was standing behind her husband, let out a quiet groan and slumped into the nearest chair. 10 years of suspense had ended with the most devastating confirmation possible. Where exactly did you find her?" Richard asked, his voice trembling. Ramirez explained the situation as delicately as she could. She was inside a concrete wall in the west wing of the building. Judging by the position of her body and the design of the cavity, it wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately placed her there. News of the discovery at Pineview Resort spread through Traverse City with the speed of wildfire. By late afternoon, all local news stations were broadcasting breaking news, and by the next morning, the story was on the national news. Shocking found in Michigan. Body of girl who went missing. 10 years ago is detected murdered in wall, read the headline in the Chicago Tribune. On March 12th, the day after the remains were discovered, Dr. Chang began a full forensic examination. For this complex work, she brought in an anthropologist from the University of Michigan, Dr. James Foster, who specializes in identifying human remains and determining causes of death. The mummification of the body in this case played into the hands of the investigation, Dr. Foster later explained. Although visual identification was not possible, many tissues and organs were preserved, allowing us to conduct a much more detailed analysis than if we had only been dealing with skeletonized remains. Preliminary examination confirmed that the remains belonged to a young woman between the ages of 18 and 25, about 5 feet 6 inches tall, which matched Emily Lawson's parameters. Samples for DNA testing were immediately sent to the state lab, but the results had to wait at least 2 weeks. In the meantime, Dr. Chang made an even more horrifying discovery. Examining the victim's lungs and airway, she found particles of cement and concrete dust, as well as indications that the victim had tried to breathe already after being placed in the wall. All indications are that the victim was alive at the time of walling up, Dr. Chang said at a police briefing on March 13th. The lungs show evidence of inhalation of concrete dust and attempted breathing in a confined space. Also present are injuries on the wrists and ankles, indicating that the victim was bound but attempted to free himself. The discovery shocked even seasoned police officers. The idea that someone could have been walled up alive seemed too cruel, almost unbelievable. When I heard about it, I was physically sickened, admits Detective Ramirez. It's one thing to kill a person, and quite another to condemn them to a slow death in the dark, walled up in concrete. It takes a special kind of cruelty, almost inhuman. On March 14th, police officially announced that the remains found were highly likely to be those of Emily Lawson, although official confirmation of DNA testing had not yet been made. It was also announced that the death is being treated as a homicide, and the investigation has been reopened in full. Grand Traverse County Sheriff Mark Thompson created a special investigative team made up of the department's top detectives, including Laura Ramirez. The priority was to determine who had access to the Pineview Resort construction site in January of 2002, when the murder allegedly occurred. "We are starting from scratch," Sheriff Thompson said at the press conference. "Although we have the materials from the original investigation, it's been 10 years. A lot of things have changed. People have moved, their memory has faded. But we now have something we didn't have before, a specific crime scene and hard evidence that a murder was committed." The investigation team's first step was to locate and interview everyone who worked on the construction of the Pineview Resort in January of 2002. According to archival documents provided by the construction company, there were about 40 people working at the site at the time, including laborers, engineers, and managers. Tracking down these people 10 years later was not easy, Ramirez explains. Many had changed jobs, some had moved to other states, and a few people had sadly passed away. But we were determined. Everyone who worked on that construction site had to be found and interviewed. Among those whom police were looking for with particular fervor was Jason Morgan, Emily's ex-boyfriend, who worked at the construction site as a carpenter's helper and was one of the prime suspects in the original investigation. Morgan had moved from Grand Rapids to Chicago about 5 years ago, Ramirez reports. "We contacted the Chicago Police Department, and they helped us establish his current whereabouts. He worked for a construction company, was married, and had 2 children. At first glance, an ordinary life." Jason Morgan agreed to a voluntary interview, which took place on March 16th at the Chicago police station. He appeared tense, but cooperated with the investigation. "I've been waiting for this call for 10 years, he told detectives. Every time the phone rang from an unknown number, I thought, this is it. They've found Emily, and they suspect me again. Morgan confirmed he was working construction in January of 2002, but adamantly denied any involvement in Emily's disappearance or death. He said he was indeed absent from work after a party the day the girl disappeared, but only because he was upset about the breakup of a relationship. I loved her, he insisted. How could you think I was capable of doing this to her? To brick a person alive, it's monstrous. Detectives asked Morgan to provide a DNA sample to compare with any biological traces that might be found on the remains or in the wall cavity. He agreed without hesitation. In parallel with interviewing former construction workers, investigators scrutinized documentation of the Pineview Resort project. Of particular interest were construction plans, work schedules, and safety inspection reports. We were looking for any anomalies, Ramirez explains. Unplanned changes to the structure, deviations from the design, areas where work was being done without proper supervision. Given that the body was hidden in the wall, we hypothesized that the killer must have had knowledge of construction processes and access to the facility after hours. On March 20th, the Michigan State Lab confirmed what already seemed obvious. The remains found in the wall were Emily Lawson's. DNA from the remains completely matched the samples provided by her parents. The Lawson family could finally begin planning their daughter's funeral after 10 years of agonizing uncertainty. It's a strange feeling, Richard Lawson said in an interview. On the one hand, there's a certain relief that we finally know what happened to Emily. On the other, to find out that she died in such a horrible way. No parent should have to go through something like that. Emily Lawson's funeral was held on March 24, 2012, at Oakwood Cemetery, next to a memorial plaque that had stood there for several years now. More than 300 people came to see off the girl, whose fate touched the hearts not only of the people of Traverse City, but of people all over the country. Meanwhile, the forensic examination continued to bring new evidence. Dr. Chang and Dr. Foster found evidence of mechanical injuries on the remains, indicating a struggle before death. We found defensive wounds on the victim's right arm, Dr. Chang reported. This suggests that she was trying to defend herself against her attacker. We also found evidence of blunt force trauma to the back of the head. This may have been done to immobilize the victim before placing her in the wall. Another important discovery was made when the stomach contents were analyzed. There, food remnants were found partially digested, which made it possible to establish roughly the time of the last meal before death. Judging from the condition of the food in the stomach, death occurred about 4 to 6 hours after the last meal, Dr. Foster explained. Assuming Emily ate something at the party, which ended around 11 p.m., her death probably occurred between 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning of January 24th. This time window was critical to the investigation. It meant that Emily had not been killed immediately after her disappearance, but had been somewhere, possibly in captivity, for several hours. On March 26th, the police received the results of the analysis of the materials collected from the cavity in the wall where the body had been found. Among other things, particles of wood shavings, fabric fibers, and, most importantly, several hairs that did not belong to Emily were found there. We sent those hairs for DNA analysis, Ramirez says. In the year 2002, DNA analysis technology was not as advanced as it is now. Back then, we needed a lot more biological material to get a profile. Today, we can literally work with just a few cells. While the lab was analyzing hair, investigators continued to interview former construction workers. Particular attention was paid to those who had access to the area where the ill-fated wall was erected. According to construction documents, this part of the building was under construction in late January of the year 2002, exactly when Emily disappeared. On March 30th, detectives arrived at the offices of Bennett Construction to interview Michael Bennett, a former construction foreman for the Pineview Resort site, and now a successful construction business owner. Bennett was extremely polite and cooperative, Ramirez recalls. He gave us access to all of his extant documentation on the project and detailed how work was organized on the site in January of 2002. According to Bennett, the West Wing, where the wall with the body was found, was being built by a 6-man crew under the direct supervision of senior carpenter Thomas Green. Bennett claimed that he personally inspected all the work daily, but admitted that he could not supervise the site 24 hours a day. All the construction workers had keys to the temporary fences, he explained. Theoretically, any one of them could have come to the site after hours. But why would anyone do that, especially in January when the temperature drops below freezing? A construction site is not a comfortable place to be in this weather. Bennett also mentioned that something unusual did happen at the facility in late January. One segment of the West Wing wall had to be rebuilt because of problems with the original concrete pour. It happens from time to time, he explained. If the concrete is poured in a hard freeze and doesn't have time to properly set before freezing, the structure can be compromised. We noticed cracks in one of the segments and decided to rebuild it to avoid future problems. This fact immediately caught the attention of investigators. Rebuilding a segment of the wall meant that at some point a cavity was created there, which was then filled with new concrete. The perfect place to hide a body. Do you remember who exactly worked on the rebuilding of that segment? Ramirez asked. Bennett hesitated a moment. It was a routine job. Most likely it was handled by Green's entire crew, but I can check in the paperwork, if it survives. On the 1st of April, after 10 days of intensive work, the lab provided the results of the analysis of the hair found in the wall cavity. A DNA profile was isolated and compared to samples from all the suspects, including Jason Morgan. The results were shocking. The DNA from the crime scene did not match any of the samples except for one. That one sample belonged to a man no one had ever seriously suspected, a man who had lived and worked in Traverse City all these years, a respected member of the community. On April 2nd, 2012, Detective Laura Ramirez sat in her office looking at the results of the DNA analysis. The hair found in the wall cavity next to Emily Lawson's body belonged to Michael Bennett, a former construction foreman for Pineview Resort, and now a successful businessman and respected resident of Traverse City. I reread the report over and over again, not believing my eyes, Ramirez recalls. Bennett was never a prime suspect. He helped with the initial investigation, gave full access to the construction site, seemed genuinely interested in finding Emily. Sheriff Mark Thompson immediately convened an emergency meeting of the investigation team. The evidence was irrefutable. Bennett's DNA at the crime scene, his role as construction manager, his knowledge of the rebuilding of the wall segment in late January of 2002. But more was needed to bring charges. We have to proceed very carefully, the sheriff warned. Bennett is a powerful man in this town. He has connections, money for good lawyers. If we press charges without hard evidence, he could get away with it. Investigators began scrutinizing Bennett's background. They discovered that before moving to Traverse City in 2001, in the year 2001, he had worked on construction projects throughout Michigan. More importantly, they discovered that Bennett had bought a house just 3 blocks from the Lawson family in 2003, well after Emily's disappearance. It fit the profile of someone obsessed with their crime, explains criminal psychologist Dr. Sarah Mendez, who was brought in for a consultation. Killers sometimes settle near the sites of their crimes or the families of their victims. It gives them a sense of control, allows them to follow the investigation. On April 4th, with a search warrant in hand, police arrived at Bennett's home and office. In the basement of his home, investigators found a cache of items belonging to Emily. Her earrings, some of her clothes, and, most disturbingly, a diary she kept in the last months of her life. This was a classic case of trophy behavior, Dr. Mendez commented. The killer kept the victim's belongings as a reminder of his power over her, as a way to relive the moment of the crime over and over again. That same evening, Michael Bennett was arrested on suspicion of the murder of Emily Lawson. The news instantly shook Traverse City. No one could believe that a man everyone considered a model citizen was capable of such a heinous crime. Michael always seemed so quiet, so dependable, says Carol Wilson, who knew him for years. He built houses, sponsored the local soccer team. How could anyone suspect him of being a killer? Initially, Bennett denied all the charges. His defense attorney, Richard Stanford, claimed a miscarriage of justice and insisted the evidence was fabricated or misinterpreted. Under the weight of the evidence, however, the defense began to crumble. The decisive moment came on April 7th, when investigators showed Bennett the results of an analysis of his computer. Technical experts had found deleted files containing photos of Emily taken long before she disappeared, in stores, on the street, through her bedroom window. Bennett had been following the girl for months. After 5 hours of interrogation, Bennett broke down and confessed. His detailed confession, recorded on video, revealed the full horrifying picture of the crime. "I first saw her in the summer of 2001, he said in an emotionless voice. She was coming to the construction site with lunch for her boyfriend, Jason. She was so bright, full of life, I started following her, learning her habits, her routine." According to the confession, on the night of the disappearance, Bennett happened to see Emily as she was walking to her car after a party. He offered her a ride, taking advantage of an acquaintance through Jason. When Emily got into his car, he hit her over the head with a tire iron and drove her to the Pineview Resort construction site. "I wanted her to be a part of my building forever." These words from Bennett's confession shocked even seasoned investigators. Michael Bennett was charged with kidnapping and first-degree murder. On April 9th, he appeared in court for a preliminary hearing. The entire Traverse City watched the trial with horror and disbelief. The Lawson family attended every court hearing. "For 10 years we lived with the unknown," Richard Lawson told reporters. "For 10 years this man walked among us, saw our grief, maybe even expressed sympathy. And all the while he knew what he had done to our daughter." On May 23, 2012, exactly 10 years and 4 months after Emily's disappearance, Michael Bennett was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without parole. The closing of Emily Lawson's case brought the town not only relief, but deep shock. All these years, the killer had lived among them, worked with them, and participated in the community. It has caused many to rethink their idea of what evil looks like and how close it can be. "We'll never know why he chose Emily," says Detective Ramirez. "Some crimes have no logical explanation, but at least now we know the truth, and the Lawson family can finally begin the healing process." In memory of Emily Lawson, the city installed a bench with a plaque in the park where she liked to walk, and the old Pineview Resort building was completely demolished. No one else wanted to stay in a place that held such a dark secret.